Hi, my name is Tommy Cronin. We are the Three Amigos, and these are our NICU improvement concepts.
Hi, my name is Julian Umali. I was tasked with the first challenge in concept number one, which is to identify and implement methods to comfort the cranky baby using motions. My research and responsibilities were part of that challenge and to figure out different types of methods and ways to comfort the baby using motion. Um, that included different types of motion to use and different tactics to use, either holding the baby or on the bed um, to comfort them.
I am Tommy Cronin. My challenge was to identify and implement methods to help premature babies maintain their body temperature without running the risk of overheating or overcooling. My research and responsibilities were to maintain the body temperature and figure out which materials or strategies were the best way to maintain the baby's body temperature.
My name is Caleb Ackerman. I was tasked with Concept 3, which is securing a gravity feeding syringe in different locations around the NICU. My research included the gravity feeding tubes themselves and how I can make an arm that can be positioned to hold them in place when outside the isolette or while inside.
Going over the overview of this presentation, we'll be going over a problem statement that we came up with to improve the NICU unit. The requirements that we were tasked with for the challenges of this project. There are three different concepts. Concept one, which was the stimulating bed. Concept two, which is the temperature control of the baby. And concept three, which was our gravity feeding syringe. And then we'll lastly wrap this all up and conclude it with our information to contact us.
Our problem statement that we came up with was how can we improve the NICU unit to be more user-friendly and create a more comfortable environment for the baby. It is important to make improvements because if this problem isn't solved, then it will be harder and more labor-intensive for the doctors and nurses to care for the premature babies and more uncomfortable for the child in care.
So our requirements were that our team had to use at least one stepper motor from our kits to create motion. We had to integrate our products to use at least one sensor from our kits. Our team had to use at least one display from our kits on our product. We had to use control a temperature, a heating pad using microcontroller from our kits. We had to also create and design a 3D printed part that had to be put somewhere on our product, and it had to look pleasing to the eye.
So for concept one, which is to identify and implement methods to comfort the cranky baby, this concept challenge needed to use some sort of motion to essentially take care of the child and make sure that they were comfortable, and also that they were stimulated in the sense that they would be able to breathe correctly. With this in mind, the nurses talked about how this could be a basis of a slight vibration or some sort of stimulating factor to just remind the baby to breathe. The team's concept for this idea was to create 3D printed models, stands that could be put underneath the bed of the child. Now, these stands would then be controlled using a few stepper motors that would then vibrate the stands and take on the vibrations so that it would almost massage the child into reminding them to breathe correctly. This concept meets multiple requirements for the project, where it uses stepper motors and then also uses the 3D printed parts. This works well within our budget to make something that would be able to stimulate a child and comfort them using some sort of motion.
So my concept was temperature control. And one of the biggest problems with the NICU is keeping the baby's temperature consistent. So the idea was to make sure that the baby always had the right temperature without having the nurses having to watch them all the time. So what we came up with as a group was to put a heating pad underneath the baby. So with this, the heating pad would have an adjustable temperature control, so the baby's temperature would always be consistent. It would be connected to the heating pad. Actually, the heating pad would be connected to a monitor that gives us the baby's exact temperature, With this design, the nurses would be more relaxed without having to stress about the baby's temperature all the time. The team agreed with this design because it covered a lot of requirements, and it also worked very well with our design. Um, the requirements that it had to meet was keeping the baby a specific temperature. It needed to use a monitor or a display, um, and we had to stay within the budget. To keep a baby, to keep the baby's temperature specific, we used a sensor that would be designed to um, keep that would control the heating pad if it got too hot or too cold. The monitor would be attached to the baby's armpit to get an accurate reading of the temperature. This way, if the baby's temperature was too cold, then the heating pad would be turned on automatically. And if the baby's temperature got too hot, the heating pad would turn off, which would allow the baby to cool down. This would all cost around 20 CETA bucks, which is well within our budget.
For the third concept was the gravity feeding syringe arm. So this design allows one end of the arm to be clamped onto a chair, like for when parents are feeding the baby, or onto the outside of the NICU itself when nurses need to feed the baby while it's still in the isolette. The other side has another smaller clamp to hold onto the feeding syringe, and in the middle, there are a few ball and socket joints to allow this to be positioned in the right spot to maybe wrap around someone's shoulder if they're sitting in a chair, or wrap around parts of the NICU unit itself when the baby is still inside there. So this concept, I chose this one because it's a simple design and it incorporates one of our requirements, which was having 3D printed parts. So the ball and socket joints are going to be designed in CAD and 3D printed, and then constructed into this positionable arm. The conclusion for this slideshow / presentation, these three concepts are intended to make improvements to the NICU. If you have any questions, concerns, or additional information to help improve these concepts, please feel free to reach out to us with the contact information below. We'll take in any of your considerations, and we'll try to make our parts the best they can be.